Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching a Now You Know special report.
Is Tesla going to go private?
Okay, Jesse, so a lot of news here that just came in.
Yes.
Let's cover it. So, all right, so what happened today, Jesse?
So Elon tweeted at 9:48 a.m., am considering taking Tesla private at 420. Funding secured.
Now, at first, many thought he was just joking or maybe his Twitter account was hacked, but he soon started answering questions on Twitter, and then he released a blog post of a letter that he sent to Tesla employees, so we knew this was legit.
Yep. So things started to happen almost immediately. The stock started just climbing like crazy. It was so crazy that the NASDAQ halted trading for about 2 hours. Is this a common thing? I haven't really heard or seen this before.
Very uncommon. They only usually stop trading when there's a trading imbalance. And in this case, it's usually when there's high orders for buying that they can't quite explain and it's throwing off their algorithm. So I think what was going on at the higher ends of the NASDAQ was that they were trying to figure out whether this tweet thing that was going on was for real or not.
Wow. So this tweeting continued. A lot of people wanted answers because this was pretty vague. So Fred Lambert from Electric said, "Morning, can you confirm if you would retain control over the company? It wouldn't be an outright sale."
And Elon said, "I don't have a controlling vote now and wouldn't expect any shareholder to have one if we go private. I won't be selling in either scenario." Tweeting continued. Gally from Hyperchange said, "No, still processing what this means, but would be sad to see all the investors who've been with Tesla miss out on the upside over the next few years. Although if this helps the mission and Elon thinks it's smart, I understand and fully support."
Elon got back to him. He said, "My hope is that all current investors remain with Tesla, even if we're private. Would create special purpose fund enabling anyone to stay with Tesla. Already do this with Fidelity's SpaceX investment." So basically, this is completely different than what we originally thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I was really sad this morning when I first heard him tweet it, not because I didn't want him to go private, but because I knew that I wouldn't be able to be a shareholder anymore. But this tweet means that we'll be able to remain with him when he goes private. So he kind of went on tweeting about that.
Yep.
Shareholders could either sell at 420 or hold shares and go private. Derek M. then asked, could we still invest once private?
Elon said yes, but liquidity events would be limited to every 6 months or so, like SpaceX.
Investor support is confirmed. Only reason why this is not certain is that it's contingent on a shareholder vote. Now, let's parse this a little bit because there's a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah.
So first of all, we just said that as in with SpaceX, you can have private investing in a private company. And so if you're a SpaceX employee right now, you can have stock and you can get in and out of the stock. And that is every 6 months or so with this Fidelity shareholder account. They will buy shares from you if you want to get out, or you can buy more shares if you want to get more in. And then he said that his investor support is confirmed, but he's still waiting for a shareholder vote. That means that Tesla shareholders, and we are Tesla shareholders, and hopefully you are too, would have to vote. Now, in my opinion, according to the supermajority rules of Tesla stock, it would require a 2/3 vote. And so he's going to have to hold a vote, and we're all going to vote our shares and see if we want to go private.
Right.
So this might be a little overwhelming for some people because we're talking about private companies, public companies. I mean, everyone hears about what's happening on the Dow Jones every day, but they may not understand what's the difference. So let's just kind of parse this out for you guys. Let's take SpaceX as our example of a privately held company. It has stock that is held by private investors. Elon is the CEO, who is also the biggest stockholder with 54% of the shares, and he actually controls 78% of the shares.
So he has voting control for about 78%.
Yeah, and that means that basically, even though he doesn't own all those extra shares, they're either friends or family or people he can trust will vote with him. We can't easily value the company because the shares aren't publicly traded, but it's probably worth around $25 billion.
Right.
So many employees of SpaceX can buy shares in the company, and in fact, many of them get offered shares as part of their employment package. And every 6 months or so, SpaceX offers to buy them back so that you can liquidate your stock if you want. As a privately held company, you don't have to reveal much about your financials other than you have to pay your taxes. So we don't really get to see what's going on inside the company.
So there's a big reason that Elon wants to do this. He likes being privately held because there isn't this constant focus on the quarterly numbers. He said in the past that he regrets having to take Tesla public because of the Wall Street scrutiny every quarter. Basically, we've talked about this in depth like last week.
Right.
And, having your stock traded publicly on Wall Street is a blessing and a curse because you get all this money, but it is such a huge pain. So I think the question here is, if it sucks so much to be a publicly traded company, then why go public at all?
All right, well, let's take a company and how it starts, right? So most companies, they start with an investor, like your mom or your dad or your uncle, who loans you enough money to do something, maybe in your garage. So maybe they loan you like $15,000, and you go off in your garage and you build something and you make a prototype, and now you need money to test it and to produce it in a factory and get it to market, right? So that's more than your uncle and your mother can pay for. So you go out and you try and get an angel investor or a venture capitalist involved, and you then set up a corporation, you issue stock, and you're still private, but now you have shareholders, you've set up a board, and you hire a CEO. So then you go through some more funding rounds as you want to get bigger and bigger. You go through rounds A, B, C, and D until at some point you're so big, but you need more money to do something even bigger, like Tesla needed, right? They had gotten to the point where they could make some cars, the Roadsters, but now they wanted a factory to make a lot of cars,
right?
The Model S. So they went public, and that gives you access to the world. That means that any investor, big or small, can invest in you at this point. So when you go public, the initial investors all are given this new publicly traded stock, depending on how much they invested, and this gets diluted by even more publicly traded stock.
Now, why would you want to do that? Because, I mean, like when Facebook went public, Mark Zuckerberg retained a majority of the stocks, and then he diluted basically everyone else in the company and, you know, ruined everything. And why would you dilute this?
Right, and Facebook's a rare example. Hardly ever does the one person retain ownership of the company. Tesla stock, for instance, Elon has a large holding of 22%, but that's not the majority.
Right.
And so why would you want to do this? Because you are going to make a whole lot more money. When Tesla went public in June of 2010, they sold their initial public offering for $17 a share.
Wow.
And they raised $226 million. Think about that for a second. Company's now worth $65 billion.
Wow.
They raised $226 million, and that was considered a lot of money.
Yep.
They issued 13.3 million shares that day. And so today, they have 169 million shares outstanding, and Elon owns 22% of them.
Okay, but wait a minute. You said that they had 13.3 million shares when they went public.
Right. So they have been issuing more over the years, and every time they issue more stock, they raise more money.
I see. But doesn't that dilute the value of the stocks?
It does.
So then why would anyone want that?
Because there's a good chance that if the company does well, that you're going to be raising even more. So, for instance, today, with 170 million shares, they're worth $380 a share.
Right.
And let's just do the math, because there's this thing called market capital, right? Market cap. Everyone's like, oh, my company's worth this much. How do you get that value? Well, it's pretty simple. You take the number of shares times the price per share, and you get the market cap. So as of yesterday, Tesla was worth $65 billion.
I see. And Elon said that they're going to be buying out shares at $420, and that's going to be about $70 million.
Right. So for Elon to get the company back under private control, he'd have to buy everyone's outstanding shares, as Jesse said, for $420 a share. And he stated he has the funding secured, which means essentially that he has put together a group of investors that he trusts that will put up the money to buy these shares back. In exchange, these investors will get private shares in Tesla.
Okay, so that means that he would need $70 billion in private, like a private equity group, basically.
Well, you'll see by the end of this episode that may not be the case. But let's talk about the exciting part. So the exciting part is that normally when one company wants to buy another company, they make a public offer. The board and the shareholders vote on whether they approve of the offer. The SEC gives their blessing or they don't. And then you as a shareholder are either offered new shares in the new company that bought it, or you were given cash. And that's what I thought was going to happen this morning.
So, I mean, in that case, you're sort of like a peasant. You're just like, well, I guess we have a new lord today. Thank you, sir. Right. So you're saying that this is different.
So remember, Gally kind of thought the same thing I did this morning. He tweeted out, no, I don't want this to happen.
I'm going to get bought out,
right,
no matter, even if I want to keep my money in.
Right. And this is where Elon responded, my hope is that all current investors remain with Tesla, even if we're private, would create special purpose fund enabling anyone to stay with Tesla. Already do this with Fidelity's SpaceX investment.
So this is kind of the best of both worlds.
I think so.
Okay, well, let's read Elon's letter.
Yeah, this is important. So Elon sent a letter to Tesla employees today, and then he put it on the blog so that we can all read it. So here's what he said. Earlier today, I announced that I'm considering taking Tesla private at a price of $420 a share. I wanted to let you know my rationale for this and why I think this is the best path forward. First, a final decision has not yet been made, but the reason for doing this is all about creating the environment for Tesla to operate best. As a public company, we are subject to wild swings in our stock price that can be a major distraction for everyone working at Tesla, all of whom are shareholders. Being public also subjects us to the quarterly earnings cycle that puts enormous pressure on Tesla to make decisions that may be right for a given quarter, but not necessarily right for the long term. Finally, as the most shorted stock in the history of the stock market, being public means that there are large numbers of people who have the incentive to attack the company. I fundamentally believe that we are at our best when everyone is focused on executing, when we can remain focused on our long-term mission, and when there are not perverse incentives for people to try to harm what we are all trying to achieve. This is especially true for a company like Tesla that has a long-term, forward-looking mission. SpaceX is a perfect example. It is far more operationally efficient, and that is largely due to the fact that it is privately held. This is not to say that it will make sense for Tesla to be private over the long term. In the future, once Tesla enters a phase of slower, more predictable growth, it will likely make sense to return to the public markets. Here's what I envision being private would mean for all shareholders, including all of our employees. First, I would like to structure this so that all shareholders have a choice. Either they can stay investors in a private Tesla, or they can be bought out at $420 per share, which is a 20% premium over the stock price following our Q2 earnings call, which had already increased by 16%. My hope is for all shareholders to remain, but if they prefer to be bought out, then this would enable that to happen at a nice premium. Second, my intention is for all Tesla employees to remain shareholders of the company, just as is the case at SpaceX. If we were to go private, employees would still be able to periodically sell their shares and exercise their options. This would enable you to still share in the growing value of the company that you have all worked so hard to build over time. Third, the intention is not to merge SpaceX and Tesla. They would continue to have separate ownership and governance structures. However, the structure envisioned for Tesla is similar in many ways to the SpaceX structure. External shareholders and employee shareholders have an opportunity to sell or buy approximately every 6 months. Finally, this has nothing to do with accumulating control for myself. I own about 20% of the company now, and I don't envision that being substantially different after any deal is completed. Basically, I'm trying to accomplish an outcome where Tesla can operate at its best, free from as much distraction and short-term thinking as possible, and where there's as little change for all of our investors, including all of our employees, as possible. This proposal to go private would ultimately be finalized through a vote of our shareholders. If the process ends the way as I expect it will, a private Tesla would ultimately be an enormous opportunity for all of us. Either way, the future is very bright, and we'll keep fighting to achieve our mission. Thanks, Elon. The first thing a lot of people are asking is, what should I do about the stock?
Right. Do I buy it? Do I sell it?
Right.
Do I paint it?
So normally when a price like this is offered and the deal seems credible, then the stock price rises close to the asking price and then just hovers there until the deal is done. Mm-hmm. So I would expect Tesla stock to go to about 418, 419, something like that, and just kind of stay there until this deal is completed. If you want to be part of Tesla's future, financially speaking, and you don't already hold Tesla stock, now would probably be a good time to do so.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Because it's a private company, it's not like you can just go to your stockbroker and be like, hey, buy me 5 shares of Tesla, please. Your stockbroker's going to be like, sorry, it's not on my exchange.
Right.
How would you go about buying Tesla in the future?
So I think that if you own at least 1 share when the deal is made, then you will probably be in on getting the ability to buy more shares as a private investor, because you'll be one of the private investors. So I assume you'll get a letter every 6 months or an email that says, like, you want to buy more? Here's how you do it.
Okay.
If you're not, then I'm guessing it's a lot harder to do. Probably there's a way to do it, but I'm guessing it's not that easy.
Okay.
So if you want to be part of Tesla's future, this is probably the easiest way in right now. Buy at least 1 share, and you'll probably be part of that.
Yep.
If it works out the way Elon has planned, then you'll probably be able to join this private equity group. Your shares will get converted, and if you want to sell, I would expect that every few months, like he said, every 6 months, Tesla would offer to buy them just as SpaceX does.
Yep.
And I would imagine that it'd be pretty hard to buy into the private equity group unless you're a financial bigwig or already part of the group.
Yep. So was this done to avoid a hostile takeover of like Jeff Bezos or Apple or Google?
I don't think so.
Okay.
In my opinion, so the way a hostile takeover works is that it's when an outside company or group wants to buy the company without the board of directors' consent, and they do that by getting the shareholders to approve. Now, in the case of Tesla, there's a supermajority rule, which means that anytime you want to do anything like acquisitions or mergers, you need 2/3 to approve. And this is why when Tesla bought Solar City, it wasn't a done deal for Elon. He had to go to the shareholders and get 2/3 to say yes. If Apple tomorrow or Jeff Bezos wanted to take over Tesla, 2/3 of the shareholders would have to say yes.
Okay.
That's not that easy to get.
And it would be very unlikely unless everyone didn't want that to happen except Elon, because Elon holds 22%.
Right.
That means that he just needs 12% of the remaining shareholders to oppose the hostile takeover and no hostile takeover.
Right. So it's basically hostile takeover proof for Elon.
Right.
So then the question comes, why did he do it? And the short answer is he spelled it out in the letter we just read. He's sick and tired of dealing with Wall Street. He gets boneheaded questions all the time that he has to answer on earnings calls. He has to do earnings calls.
He has to leave the body shop for a couple hours. He was probably working on something. He was in the zone.
Right.
Now he has to get all these questions about stuff that isn't what he was just working on.
And it's always short-sighted stuff. I mean, do you notice that he never gets a question that's like 6 months away from now? It's all within the next, what just happened 2 days ago? What's going to happen 4 days from now?
Or, years from now. Like, hey, tell us more about the pickup truck or anything like that.
But
earnings call would be a great time to learn stuff about that. He never gets those kinds of questions.
And that's why when Galley asked some questions like that, he actually enjoyed it. Because he was not getting like, how much are you going to make next month? He got bigger questions about the vision.
Right.
Keep in mind, he doesn't have to do any of that short-term thinking for Boring Company or SpaceX because those are privately held. So he's never once had to ask, like, have we ever heard questions about how much is Boring Company making this quarter?
Right.
No.
Nothing. Same thing with SpaceX. And, I mean, I would argue that SpaceX would be nowhere near the absolute dominating force in the space industry if they had to keep up with quarterly crap.
Right. I mean,
they wouldn't have landing, rockets that would land because all the shareholders would be like, well, that's risky. I don't like risk. I'm a shareholder. Please just make a good rocket that goes up into the sky and then burns up. It's fine.
Right. I mean, if you remember correctly, SpaceX almost went under because they ran out of money. They had one more test to do, and if that failed, that would have been it.
Right.
So, yeah, exactly. That's what he likes. He likes having it privately held. And that's what he said in the letter. I fundamentally believe that we are at our best when everyone is focused on executing, when we can remain focused on our long-term mission, and when there are not perverse incentives for people to try to harm what we are all trying to achieve.
All right, so what does this mean for Tesla going forward?
So they should be able to continue raising money for things like factories. My guess is that they will just take out loans like they're doing for the Shanghai Gigafactory, and then they'll pay them back for money that they earn selling cars, batteries, and solar. But if they need a massive cash infusion for like if they wanted to buy like 5 gigafactories at once, then they could issue more private shares. So they would go to some private investment equity group or some rich person and say, hey, we need $10 billion. You want to buy some shares? And this is what Tesla, in my opinion, needs to do. They need to build up production of cars, batteries, and solar as quickly as possible.
And this is important because no one at Tesla thought that the Model 3 was going to be this popular.
Right.
They did an internal poll, and what the number that they thought for the number of pre-orders was about half the number that they got.
That was the highest poll number.
Right. The highest was half.
They were completely shocked.
Right. So I think what they're noticing is that they just don't have enough production to meet the demand. There's this huge demand for the Model 3.
Well, remember when Elon started this mission, he thought that by now other car companies, other battery companies would start to see that this is the way to go.
Right.
And that right now there'd be plenty of competition in the field. There'd be wonderful cars competing with them.
Right.
What is there besides the Bolt? Nothing with the range.
Leaf, kind of, but not even. Right.
No, I mean, if you look at like just range, for instance, there's nothing, right?
Yep.
So I think Elon has said to himself, if we really want to accomplish this mission, we've got to do it. No one else believes in it. It's not even like there's other companies trying to do it and failing, but like, oh, we hope to do what you're doing, Tesla.
Right.
They all are going, you're wrong. That's not the future.
Right.
So I think that what Tesla has to do, and I think Elon has realized this, they need to build factories as quick as humanly possible.
Right.
And I think they need like 20 gigafactories now.
Right. And what this will allow him to do is, instead of building up this sort of like camaraderie between all the companies, which he was hoping for, he was trying for, and all the companies basically were like, yeah, screw you, Elon. We're never going to switch to this. We have so much money invested in all of our crap. What he can do is just put them all out of business. And then once they go out of business, he can take all their assets for a song, just like he did with the Fremont factory.
Right.
He was able to buy it for almost nothing because that plant was going out of business. It wasn't worth much to them. He's going to be able to do that across the board.
That's right.
Ford, GM, VW, and all the Asian manufacturers. I mean, Honda doesn't have any EVs.
Exactly. That's right. So that's why he needs to do this quickly, and I think he's seeing that, and there's private money willing to do that.
Right.
And another thing to keep in mind is for Tesla's future. We learned a bunch of things today which we may have passed over. He's going to remain the CEO. He's going to keep his stock. He's not like, I'm out of here.
Right.
He's completely focused on doing this. He just wants to do it the best way possible.
Right.
So what does this mean for the shorts?
To put it bluntly, the shorts have been crushed. $420 is the highest the stock will have ever been, and shorts will have to be buying the stock back at those elevated prices to pay back their short positions.
Yeah. I mean, Elon absolutely decimated them.
Right.
I've never seen anything like this. And remember, Elon even warned them repeatedly. In fact, 6 weeks ago, he tweeted this out, about 3 weeks before short positions explode.
Of course, Elon time, 6 weeks later, but still, he's totally right. I just want to point out, this is the most shorted stock in history. The most shorted stock. And the funny thing is, he can get private equity behind him that's willing to buy out shares at $420 a share. I mean, and this is a stock that has been down into the $250 a share margin. So, I mean, it's showing that, like, these short positions, they're not true. Like, most times you'll short a stock because you know it's going to go down. These shorts are just trying to desperately claw the price down.
Yeah, these are big oil shorts, in my opinion. They're not normal shorts. And I don't think that's why they're not leaving. Because big oil, even though this sounds like a lot of money to you and I, a few $1 billion to big oil is not a lot of money.
A couple hours.
And many people have been asking me today, like, why they do this then? What is the point? If you are big oil and you short, then you get all of this press. You get to put Jim Chanos and others on CNBC constantly telling you that Tesla's going to fail, that and you get to say all these bad things.
And
about
they
the company.
keep trying to, they keep writing hatchet job stories on Tesla. So they'll say, oh, this little thing. Ooh, there's this guy who told us a lie, and we're going to tell it to you.
Right.
And then the stock price goes down 5%, and they go, the stock price went down 5%.
Right.
Look at this. This guy is true because the stock price went down. It's this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. We're totally getting away from that now. There's no, like, you can't do that now. You can't short the stock and then have the stock tumble and profit from it.
And lastly, I want to talk about who this mystical group could be that Elon said I've secured funding from.
Right. Is this the A-Team? Is this the Avengers?
I mean, because let's do how much money that we said he'd have to have. $420 a share times 169 million shares. That's $71 billion. So, he, Elon, I don't think could scrape together that much out of his piggy bank.
Right.
So here's what I want you to think about for a second. If we all go with Elon into the private company, guess how much money he has to raise?
$0, 0 cents. He doesn't have to raise a penny because he doesn't have to buy anyone's shares. Now, this isn't likely. He's likely going to need to buy out some shares because people are buying shares right now because they know that they're going to be able to cash out at $420.
Right.
But the stock, I mean, there were still lots of people. There's lots of people who are going long on Tesla because we know how insane a profitable company this can turn into.
The stock was up another 10% today.
Right.
Exactly. It was about almost 370.
Right.
So, and let's just point out, there was a story about Saudi Arabia and the sovereign group that was investing $2-3 billion in the company. The only way to be part of this new private company is pretty much now to buy the shares.
Right. So you want people to be selling their shares to cash out at the 420 so that these, people who want to get in on this private company can get in.
Now, everyone thinks 420, that's the magic number. If I get in below 420, I can make some money. Don't think that way.
Right.
420 is the price of admission to this new private company. But once the private company is formed and we move on, I believe it's going to be worth a whole lot more as the years go on. I mean, let's talk about companies like Amazon. They plowed money into building out their company for years without making a profit, and now they're a profit machine.
Right.
That's how companies generally work in this new era. This isn't regular brick and mortar kind of companies that we're talking about here. These are innovative companies building amazing machines. So don't keep thinking like, oh, 420, it's not going to get any higher than that.
Right. This is just the beginning. This is what Elon was ready to basically start at.
And what he also mentioned in his letter today is that eventually they're going to, long-term, go back to being a public company again. Now, you might be going, wait a minute, he's a public company now. Why bother doing this whole private thing in the middle?
Because the incredible growth that Tesla's going through right now. Every week is an exciting week for Tesla. There's, production numbers are going up, sales are going up, people are getting excited about their cars, people are getting their cars, they're changing the world day after day after day. But if expectations aren't met, then some things can, the stock prices can tumble and it can just fluctuate all over the place. And that doesn't really help investors.
So basically, you can join in now on the private equity and be a part of that for, I don't know how long it'll take before it gets to basically the slow growth that Elon was talking about in his letter. But I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years.
Right. So Elon's basically saying, when we are a huge, stable company like an Amazon or like maybe a
GM.
A GM kind of.
I mean, well, let's think about that. GM is at a point where it's not building new factories every week. It's got its factories. It's putting out its cars. And at some point, Tesla will be that. It'll be just putting out electric cars and doing, solar roofs and stuff like that. When it gets to that point, as he said in the letter, they'll go public again, most likely. And you'll be able to convert your shares to publicly traded shares.
Right. And that's probably, I am thinking, when Elon is going to cash out.
Exactly.
That's when he's going to say, all right, I'm going to cash out. I'm going to take all my billions of dollars and I'm going to go colonize Mars.
Yep.
That's what he's going to do. And that's probably what I'm going to do, too. I'm going to go help him.
Yeah.
I'll make the second pizza joint on Mars.
Sounds good.
So we hope that this has cleared up a little bit of the confusion. This has all happened in one day. There's just been this excitement and building and questions and answers.
It's a day I'm not going to forget anytime soon.
Yes, this is extremely exciting.
And because, it was a day where Elon tweeted out something that stopped the entire world in its tracks.
Absolutely.
Nothing like this has ever happened before.
Right.
That's why we were all like, what did he just say?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting that he can basically tweet something out and raise the stock price $6 billion.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's also a great power play to the shorts to be like, I can tweet like a 15-word, 2-sentence tweet, and I can raise my stock $6 billion.
And I like that he's a nice guy. He gave you warning. He gave you plenty of warning.
Right.
More than you deserve.
Right. This has been our special report on Tesla going private. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. There are a lot of bright people who will probably answer them, maybe including the two of us. You never know. So thanks for watching, everybody.
Now you know.